Jules.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do this to me every time, and it never ends well. I was gonna sit and tweet, and now I can't.
Yeah, you can still tweet. Well, obviously not tweet. We got footrest as well, so we're really.
Okay, so welcome to truLondon. This is the first Kelly-hosted track of the day, and Jorgen Sundeberg is going to be leading it, social guru and founder of Link Humans and the Undercover Recruiter blog. We are talking about it's who you know and can you rely exclusively on your network for job searching. Over to you, Jorgen.
Okay, right. So I'll throw that question out. Can you rely solely on networking? I think a lot of people say that. At least when I give talks sometimes at universities, I tend to quote figures saying about 60 to 80% of jobs are in the hidden job market, meaning they're not listed on job boards, they're not with recruiters and so on. I don't know where I've got that figure from, and I know it varies from country to country, from industry to industry, but perhaps around 50% or so of jobs will not be listed, won't be able to be found out there on the internet. That's where your network comes into play. So, can anyone give me a success story of how did you guys find your jobs, for instance? Was it online or was it through?
Networking.
Okay. Two networking.
Jobs, yeah.
Headhunted, okay.
Kind of network.
Yeah, in fact, to substantiate what you said, Jorgen, I was looking last night, apparently in the States, the Department of Labour have said 69% of vacancies come or job fills come through networking.
Wow.
Which I think is, it is a wow statistic, but the other side of that is that a third of jobs are not found through networking, which kind of takes us back to the question, can you rely on it? So 1 in 3 people don't find a job through networking.
And that's where you use the internet, or you use LinkedIn, you use recruiters, headhunters.
I think, aren't we talking about how strong is your network though? Because I think it depends what stage you are at in your career as well. For example, a young graduate, they might have a network of people who were really just like themselves. You know, they're not headhunters, they're not hiring managers, whatever else. And it's really at a later stage in your career that you can really rely on those people within your network. I also know that for the majority of people on LinkedIn who are working within a corporate, like Kelly, for example, the majority of my network comes from inside of Kelly. And I have to admit that, you know, you can have 500 or more contacts, but the majority will always come from within the company that you're working in. So I think there's certain things to be said about how you build your network and how you kind of develop it outside of your own company as well.
Yeah, I think it depends on what capacity you're working in. If you're in an internal role at a company, you're going to connect a lot internally in that business. But if you're customer facing or a consultant, then you get loads of connections out there. So yeah, and also what stage in your career you're at. But what's the value of combining? Because I know a lot of job seekers, for instance, they'll go out on the internet, they'll check Indeed or Kelly.com or wherever it is. They'll find some jobs in a company, and then they'll go and look at might I know in this company? How can I network my way to that?
Well, that's the ideal world, I think. I think the biggest problem with job seekers is that they rely too much on job boards to present them with opportunities, and don't use their network enough to find new jobs. But like you said, also in the Netherlands, we had some research that says 60 to 70% of jobs are hidden, are not publicly made. So if you don't tap into that large pool of jobs, then you miss out on a lot of opportunities.
But it's also even what do we mean by network, isn't it? Because I think now the perception is that we're talking online, whereas actually it's like, you know, truLondon, an absolute perfect opportunity to network, and it's how do you get that balance between meeting somebody and putting them into your online portfolio of contacts, but then also physically going out and meeting real people. You know.
Yeah, I like to say that LinkedIn, for instance, is a great networking tool. If you're a fantastic offline networker, if you don't use LinkedIn, then you're missing a trick, because you can use it just as a Rolodex to put people into your network, and you can map them out, and these people will update their contact details and so on. But then again, if you're only doing online networking, you never meet people, you never pick up the phone, speak to them, or have the face-to-face interaction, then you're never really going to get very far either. So I think combining the two are definitely the strongest way of doing it.
Yeah, I think if you're a job seeker and you're looking for a marketing job at, say, Nike, then you can identify the right persons in that company at this moment, and then you have to pick up the phone, send a message out, and get on the table just to introduce yourself to the company, and hopefully this person will remember your name when there's an opportunity becoming available in their team again. So it's online is great for identifying the right people, but that's only the first step.
Yeah, I think candidate behaviour is really interesting. So we've seen lots of examples where candidates actually use their network to understand the business, but they still revert back to, oh, there's a job on their job board and they're going to apply for that. So that next stage, which so that next stage which you're talking about, of actually they're now using their network to understand how they get the hidden jobs and understand where they are, I think that's still really evolving and really new to the market, and not a lot of candidates are thinking that way. So maybe there's an education piece that we need to do to help people know that more.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, do you feel that candidates really know, or really many candidates out there know how to use a recruiter effectively? Because what I find is that you're right, candidates will always post on job boards, they'll always go for things right in front of them, because the internet, like it's right here, right in front of me. I could look it up now, but I wouldn't, unless I'd have got into recruitment myself, like when I graduated, I would not have known to go to a recruiter, and start to, as I said, get a rapport going with a recruiter or with several recruiters. Like I did when I got into recruitment, made friends with someone one job, they moved to a better job, and I said, can you get me in with the better job? and went like that. But I wouldn't have known how powerful that would have been had I not gone into recruitment myself.
I think you're right. I think we forget, working in the recruitment industry as well, that you become a natural networker, and it's part and parcel of our concept, and I think that's really valuable. And also picking up what Paul said, to me, it's about now almost for graduates in the workplace, networking, social media, as part of that is one of those tools, but networking is such a critical life skill, and I think it will become even more important. And what do we do, as you say, to help people understand that the value of that, and joining up those dots so that they think Glassdoor for evaluating an employer, they think about how to leverage their LinkedIn contacts, they think how to build that database.
But I would say that the last thing a job seeker needs to do is build relationship with a recruiter. I mean, or it must be an agency recruiter specialized in your type of work. But really, job seekers should build connections with hiring managers, because that are the first one to give away the job.
Do you think hiring manager is open to that? Because if you are a hiring manager sat in a corporate company somewhere and you've got hundreds and hundreds of candidates contacting you almost on a daily basis, do you think that there's a need for somebody to kind of sit in between and manage that contact and those networks for them?
I think that if you build a relationship with an hiring manager, then there's no need anymore to advertise that job, and especially if you get recommended by someone to this person, you will be on top of mind of this person. The ideal situation for me is I'm a recruiter myself, is not advertise jobs either, but find the right person via networking, people that get recommended to me, and just last effort, last stage.
Do you think there's a difference though in terms of a passive or an active job seeker?
Yes.
Because if you're a passive job seeker, it's a different way of looking at it, and also whether you are in a job right now and you've got the luxury of perhaps, okay, I fancy a new challenge, or if I'm out of work right now, then really you need to try every available route, and clearly jobs that are advertised right now on a job board or immediate vacancies. So the networking thing can still play a part, but that can be a longer burn.
Yeah.
That should be something that you're doing perhaps every day.
If you're an active job seeker and you've done your networking for the last 5 years, if you got fired yesterday, you walk into 3 companies, they already know you, then half the battle's already won. Yeah. So it's about using networking and branding yourself long before you actually need it. That's so it's kind of like a career insurance policy, which a lot of people don't take out, unfortunately.
Just to pick up on Lauren's point, I think there's that change culture as well, though. So within corporates, to get the hiring community to think like that and how they're going to use their networks to help hire and attract the right people. So you start then looking at the flip side, really, of this conversation, which is when candidate goes and talks to someone in their network about the organisation, what is that experience going to be? Is it going to be a happy hiring manager who's saying it's the most fabulous place in the world to work for?
Charisma and attract great people. But also, picking up your point, saying about hiring managers perhaps don't want to be bothered with job seekers and so on. We have to remember that hiring managers, they're also managers. They have a day-to-day job to do, and they will always be interested in talking to good people around them, people in the industry. So it's about, I think, approaching these people not from a just career perspective, not to go in for conversion straight away, but get to know them, go to an event, comment on their white paper and all those bits, and then create a relationship. But then again, that's with the luxury of being perhaps a bit more passive and having more time on the side.
And it also depends as well on how good a networker the line manager is.
Yeah.
Because you know, and if the line manager's been in their job perhaps for 10+ years, then they're not used to that thought process of collaboration. Maybe it's not their company culture either, and therefore they feel a little bit resistant to that. Which is where I think, you know, when you challenge the role of a recruiter, sometimes a recruiter can also help represent an individual to a company they might have never come across before. So it opens doors that might not otherwise open for them.
Yeah, I mean, recruiters are very good matchmakers.
Yeah.
You know, they can set you up and so on, and they can spot opportunities. I know I was an agency recruiter. I think I was pretty good at when I heard a signal from a candidate, I went, was that client we spoke to 3 weeks ago? Oof. And you can connect the dots a bit, whereas hiring managers or candidates themselves, they might not see that. So that's why, there will always be a need for agency recruiters. That's the good news.
But do you think that a candidate should solely rely then on an agency and the power of the agency's network rather than the power of their own network?
Ask this gentleman here. It works for you, doesn't it?
If I'm speaking from like a job seeker point of view, as I said, I just wouldn't have known to go to a recruiter until I was in the recruitment industry, and that's the bit I'm always trying to think of. I would never have known to go to, I would have probably thought, because I was always going into sales, okay, hunt down, go for the jugular, go for the hiring manager, try and find a manager within the company, get my CV on his desk. That would have been my natural thought. I never would have thought utilise a recruiter who might have several fingers in the pie and things like this. So it's, although I see the massive benefit I've gained from it, I can't answer it because I never would have known that without having experienced it, and that's going to be. I'm always trying to think. Well, that's always going to be the same for my candidates. They're always going to see me as the annoying recruiter who calls once a month saying with a new fantastic opportunity and all the rest, but they're not quite understanding that this networking actually is quite beneficial to them, and they're getting lots of their CV in lots of good places and things like that. I never would have seen that, so it's quite hard to sort of answer really.
I think if you look at like board level people, they will be registered with a few headhunters, and they always been saying and so on. Well, they won't be looking at jobs. So for them, it really works just to be there. To be registered, because as soon as the job surfaces, they'll speak to them about it. But I think you want to use the internet, you probably want to use agency recruiters, you want to use networking. All of these bits should be part of your, I guess, career arsenal over time.
And what would you say for people, because there are some people who, for whatever reason, personality-wise or whatever else, are not natural-born networkers. So for somebody who finds it very, very difficult, I mean, what would you say to that person? How can they start? What should they do?
Use LinkedIn, because that's less scary.
I think everyone's scared of networking. Even if you're a good networker, it's an uncomfortable situation to find yourself in, especially the first time you do it, regardless of if you're an introvert or an extrovert. It's daunting to go up to someone you don't know and introduce yourself and just start talking. So it's kind of one of those, you just have to go for it. Everyone is in the same situation. Everyone feels uncomfortable. And I give that advice daily to grads, that just go and give it a try. And if the first time it doesn't work, fine, just go again and again. And eventually you'll realise that you'll end up in a situation where there are people who go to the same ones as you, so you start to build friends. So then you don't feel quite so uncomfortable. And it's just one of those, the more you do it, the easier it becomes and the easier it is to get that network going, but you have to go.
Yeah,
you have to try and push yourself past that uncomfortable point, otherwise it doesn't work.
And the hiring managers are not contacted by hundreds of people to have lunch or to drink a cup of coffee. That's what you also mentioned. That's still a learning process, and with education, almost never being asked. So there's a lot of opportunities there for job seekers.
Yeah, just having the guts to do it.
And that will get you the job in the end.
But even for, I think, for graduates starting out, that you've got an extended network. People might not consider it as a network, and clearly you don't want to just leverage friends, but it's friends of friends, and even as you start as a graduate, parents, or just thinking of that extended network, and then starting a Twitter account, whatever it is, and following people, and then they recommend you, and perhaps putting yourself out in an event, like whatever, where there's like-minded people.
But they need to actually be
it's capturing
something,
them.
because I tend to find that I probably do a bit random, so I do career chats probably 3 times a week with graduates. So that obviously takes a lot of time as a hiring manager to have to sit with sort of 3 or 4 graduates a week, half an hour, 45 minutes of your day. And when I ask them if they're on Twitter, they're like, well, yeah, but I don't actually do anything. But I just follow it for the news. I'm like, well, you need to stop doing that and you need to get active. Blogs, anything that might actually sort of make them a little bit different, or give me something to realise that actually they're even thinking about the environment they want to be working in. It just doesn't seem to enter their mind. It's almost as if they're still quite fearful. Of if they say something stupid, someone's going to pick up. It's fine, we're all human. Everyone says something stupid at some point on Twitter and whatever else. And it just shows that you're a person and you have a personality. And if you talk to people normally, you tend to find that they reciprocate, and you build a network without an agenda.
But I think there is a little bit of having an agenda. It's about who do you want that online persona to be, and understanding now that visibility. So if you want to use that to have as your career insurance policy, and I think that's an excellent way of thinking about it, then if you are talking about, or in the places that you will find, it's thinking about where are those people going to be.
And I think some people are having 2 online personas. They're having their social persona and their business persona, work persona, and the 2 are very, very separate, and the way they engage and behave is very different. And I think the point you made as well about a lot of, let's say, entry-level candidates, they're not thinking LinkedIn. So it is Twitter and Facebook, and what are the ways that they can use those tools. And I think professionals always kind of run back to LinkedIn. So that's quite an interesting point for me to think, actually, if I'm thinking about how I'm going to get the more junior candidates into my business, I need to think beyond LinkedIn in terms of networking, and how do I then start structuring networks within those tools to be effective.
But knowing your target audience.
Think about Facebook. I mean, I have quite a large network also on Facebook, also with people that are a little bit younger than me. But they have they just say that they are fired, and then they are connected with hundreds of people, so they know this person is looking for another job in that certain area. So maybe I'm not thinking about it, but they have already large networks.
I think that's a good point, because I think what you're saying as well, they're probably online, they've probably got a network, but they don't perceive it as being a network. And therefore they're not thinking what to do with it in order to, if we're saying 69-70% of people find a job through a network, so it is the biggest proportion, isn't it? And it's that hidden job market. So it's that step of how do I tap into that? What steps do I need to take?
My point is to never close your network off. So people who private all their social networks, that's a massive problem, because you never know at what point you might get someone following you, and it might be a year ago, and actually you end up needing them a year's down the line. Or just to try and keep it as open as possible, because the minute you close it down, that if for example, if you're recruiting for a social media agency, that poses questions straight away. So what are you trying to hide? Why are you not? Well, no, but it is though, isn't it? If you have nothing to hide and if you're open and with everything you do, you shouldn't have it closed down, and you're already blocking
people can't find you.
to find you, and it doesn't work. And if I can find myself quicker than I can find you on a social media space, if that's the industry you're going into, I think that's quite worrying as well. If I can't find you, but you say you work in a particular sort of industry sector, but you're not visible, that to me is quite a worrying sign as well, because I don't think it's very feasible. If you're going to be moving into a market and you're not visible in that market, it makes you wonder, well.
Because I think that's the interesting point as well, isn't it? It's not even about what is your current network right now, whether that be 500 contacts, 600 contacts, whatever. It's about the extended reach of that and how people can find you. So it's about constantly growing that network, because and I think the other thing is who within that network, who are the kind of active influencers, because there's usually 1 or 2 people or 5 or 10 people who can help springboard you into other networks. And there's some of those people that are just very, very passive because they did it and they thought they should do it, but then forget all about their online persona or whatever. And it's finding those people that you can network with more proactively.
I think you raise a really interesting point, Rachel, because you just said, networks are growing massively, and it's obviously the idea behind the new generation is that they just network and they don't realise that they're doing it. So how are we going to manage that? I mean, you'll probably end up in a state where you've got, thousands of contacts within your networks. How are you going to manage that to do what you said, Rachel, to pick out those key influencers and, do you have a different approach for those people as opposed to the rest in your network? I mean, how are future generations going to manage having such a huge network of contacts?
I guess it's about segmenting and picking out the cherries. Like, we all have Twitter lists, for instance. We can't look at, depending on how many Twitter followers we have, we typically can't look at everyone all the time. So it's about knowing the ones who are consistently giving you good information and people you actually interact with and so on, or that that they have a strong network. So I think we also need to remember if someone has 500 or 600 friends on Facebook, as a graduate, you'll think, well, these people are useless because they're in the same boat as me. They're also looking for a job. Yes, but who do they know? Who are their friends of friends, and who are their parents, who are their brothers, and so on. That's how you need to think. It's like LinkedIn, first, second, third degree connections. That you've got to think beyond your first circle.
They always say it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. So it's it's hard to tell which are those weak ties. That's another thing is the strength of weak ties from research from a Gannovector. He says also that those people that you don't know very well, they are the most valuable in networking.
I think Twitter's a dodgy one though, because people tend to just add. So people tend to add people based on sort of their hashtag. So if you have in your bio that you work in social media, all of a sudden they're following 1,000 people just because they happen to work in social media. And I think that you have to be a bit more clever with Twitter, because then your stream just gets filled with content and rubbish. And actually, how many of those 1,000+ people do you genuinely talk to? Exactly. Because actually, you can have 2,000, 3,000 people, but if you don't talk to them, they're not actually very useful to you. So I think it's kind of one of those, LinkedIn, fine, because it's got your whole CV on it, and that's fantastic. So I think with Twitter, you just have to sort of quality as well as quantity. So
but then that raises an interesting point, because maybe as well the value of networking is actually deciding who you are and who you want to be, rather than trying to be all things to all people. Because otherwise, as you say, you've got this massive network that is actually meaningless. And if you're saying that you want to, we're saying how can you leverage your network to find an opportunity, then it's got to be the right people. And I know that slightly conflicts with what we were saying about sometimes you've got to reach out to, especially when you're starting out, but you've also got to decide what is your persona, who do you want to be, and kind of developing that.
And it's what you want in your feed and who you want to interact with, because if you're happy to have your feed filled with thousands and thousands of different things, I guarantee you'll probably miss something at some point, which actually was probably useful to you.
Yeah.
So I'm probably just a bit of a weird one that doesn't. I have a lot less people that I follow than follow me. I don't know why on earth they follow me to start with, but they do. And I tend to find that actually I tend to cull every so often.
Yeah.
Because actually sometimes I sit there going, I haven't read you for months, so I don't really know why I'm still following you. Yeah. Or you follow people where it's relevant for a period of time, and then where it's no longer relevant, you unfollow, so you bring in someone else who becomes relevant to what you want to know about. But I think a lot of people don't utilise the ability to follow and unfollow, so that you almost tailor the content that comes into your feed, so that it's useful for you and you network with the right person at the right time.
You kind of see that pattern of the first adoption of these tools, and you just start following everyone, and then you start getting smart as you are, and start saying, okay, well, what does this actually mean to me, and what can I physically manage? And we all hear the stories of these things take over people's lives sometimes. So you're actually thinking, what's the purpose of this?
I mean, but exactly, events. You find an event, you come to an event, you talk to one person, and all of a sudden you tweet one thing, and hundreds of people follow you. And you think, I tweeted about one thing, like, I probably won't tweet about this again. And you get all the people from the industry just following you for 2 days, and then they just disappear again. And just think,
because you didn't follow back.
That's how we feel in this industry.
But then I'm maybe some of those people that think that if I'm happy for you to follow, but interact with me, and then that might make me want to sort of have that relationship and follow you back. Otherwise, it's being passive again, isn't it? And
but I don't need or even want to interact with thousands of my followers on Twitter. I don't.
True.
I would spend.
But do you find that everyone that follows you actually starts talking to you? Because I find that they
no, I'm glad to.
Which is why I never follow them back. And that's my point, that if you want to make a meaningful connection, you have to start that conversation, not just be passive with them.
No, they are following me because of relevant news. So they know me because they want to.
But then if they want to use you as leverage, they have no relationship with you.
Yes, just send me a tweet, an email, and a Facebook message, and I'm happy to introduce you to.
But that would be my point, though. That.
But there was no interaction beforehand. But I'm happy to introduce you to anyone.
Maybe we're a little bit different.
But that's interesting as well, is how to take it from that kind of passive following relationship again into true networking, because I think networking is a word that in itself is bandied around, and it's probably, we talk about social networks, don't we? But actually, there's, again, even within the network community, there's people that are just very passive, that just do it because it's an easy follow, and there's people that then try and take that to the next level by building a real person relationship, by reaching out to you to say, can you help me?
But I think in normal networking and online networking, what I tend to do, and I know other people do, is you start as an onlooker, you start watching a little bit, see what's going on, and then decide who's good, who's not good, and then who do you want to follow, who do you want to learn more from, and then perhaps take things to the second level. So, Jules, might be some people that think, oh, you look really interesting. I want to listen to her for a week or two before start making connections. So you might miss out on one or two of those people.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
I get people who send me a message on LinkedIn saying, oh, I followed you on Twitter for 2 years, for instance. I like that article and so on. Let's meet up for a coffee. And I actually, honestly, don't know who they are. And I go, great, okay, we have something in common here. Let's talk.
I think a really interesting point about you made about Twitter, that in that interacting, excuse me, was that. What I was sort of thinking in my mind was, okay, so that's a great place for Twitter to do that. Different people respond different ways, and it opens a different sort of ways of social connection. But what about bringing that onto LinkedIn? Because I don't know about you guys, but I've got thousands of connections on LinkedIn, and I probably only talk to them when I've got a job, or when I want to post an article, or when something comes up. I don't take the time to use LinkedIn like you probably use Twitter, or like I use Facebook.
Yeah.
But why not? Why don't people do that?
Exactly the same thing as we were talking about Twitter. That LinkedIn as a tool to engage and communicate is very static.
I don't know, because pre-True, I reached out, Jorgen, quite a few people say, I'll see you at True. So because you've kind of got email contacts there as well. I think it depends on where your relationship is with that person. Is it a real relationship? Is it easy to connect with them on LinkedIn?
Would you tweet Jorgen or use LinkedIn?
Yesterday I used LinkedIn.
But is that because we're sat on LinkedIn, so we expect other people to be sat on LinkedIn, but actually the majority of people who work aren't on LinkedIn all day, every day.
No. If you work in sales, recruitment, marketing, then yes.
You sat on LinkedIn all day, but actually the majority of people maybe only dip into their LinkedIn once a week, once every 2 weeks, kind of.
Whenever they get an email.
Whenever they get, or even that.
I think the message is about finding the right channel to approach, to generate a lead, and that's the other thing to me with the networking, the power of the networking. It's not about trying to find a job necessarily. It's about a lead or an opening that might take you somewhere else, and it's having that open mind and mentality rather than thinking, have you got a job for me? Because you probably haven't, but you might know 5 or 10 other people that I could talk to, and they might not have one, but that might lead me to the job.
And if you flip that on its head and you look at how recruiters are using LinkedIn, I think there's a lot to be said about following a similar approach, because not everybody is a candidate. There are a lot of passive candidates, and I think I don't know about you guys, but I've seen more and more in recent weeks a steady stream of jobs on LinkedIn, and it gets quite frustrating because I'm not there to look at jobs. I'm there to find interesting articles or to hear what my network's been saying about a particular topic, and when I see job after job after job, it gets a bit frustrating, and I can only imagine for other kind of people out there as well who are using it as a networking tool and are not using it to go and find a job, although maybe 5 years time in the future they might look to that person to find a job. I think that recruiters have to be aware of that sense of also how are they using their
But that's
networking.
interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose you're not actively looking. It's almost like, don't give me a job, and so there's certain routes where you would want, job board, obviously you would go there, or recruitment agency, because you're now very much on mode, I want a job. Whereas actually it's almost like, don't encroach in my networking space with job opportunities.
Do you think LinkedIn, and I feel like this, to be honest, you're a little bit hesitant or afraid to post something that isn't business related on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It might be business interest article, it might be something slightly a bit away from business, but I find, because all I see on LinkedIn is industry, recruitment, Boolean search, all the rest of it. What I don't find is rarely does someone put an interesting article for me to read, whether it's in business or not. I find myself, I'm quite hesitant about doing that. I've been thinking about doing it.
To do what? To post an article?
As if you would on, share a BBC article on Twitter or something like that. I've never done it on LinkedIn. I've never had anyone within my network.
I do it nearly every
We
other day.
need to connect.
But that might just be because you've always used it for one specific, in one specific way, so you wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable to suddenly break how people read your newsfeed by putting in something that you might perceive as being random, and they might be like, it's a bit weird. And then they'll probably just forget about it the next second and then carry on.
I was training a recruiter last week, or a group of recruiters, property recruiters, and we were doing status update. We did a little competition who could get the most likes or something silly. And one of them, he just froze up and he went, no, because all I post is jobs, and that's what people expect from me. If I put something else out, people might start removing me from LinkedIn and so on. So he just froze up. He couldn't do it.
Quick question. Maybe you asked this guy the same question. How does he know that's what people expect that from him?
Exactly. And I think you need to mix up the content. And I was speaking to Deloitte the other day, and the guys there, they say their policies, their recruiters should never post jobs out online. Instead, they just go out and engage with people all the time. However, they tell their hiring managers and people in teams they can post the jobs because they're relevant to their networks, whereas recruiters are connected to loads of people. I thought that was good.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And do we get to, I think you picked up on this earlier, the point where actually the recruiters have access to the hiring managers' networks, and they're actually the ones that are doing the work for the hiring manager, so the hiring manager just sits there and waits for the responses to come in, and I think that's going to be a really interesting point to see if cultural change and people can change into that kind of trust environment to let the recruiter.
I asked the question, and then at Deloitte it's all manual. They're encouraged to share it, but they can't force them. Because the LinkedIn profile, I guess, belongs to the individual.
What it seems like there's a sort of undertone suggestion here is that sources, researchers, people doing that sort of level of work within recruitment, are almost going about their job backwards by going out there and saying, here's a job, I'm going to message you on LinkedIn, do you want to work for so-and-so, rather than doing actually just to suggest, sources should be great networkers, they should be the fun people, they should be the Twitters, the Facebookers, the LinkedIn, attracting all the interest and getting as many likes as possible, and then directing them to the hiring manager at that point. You might want to speak to this person on the back of that, and then the hiring manager can take it all in and say, right, we've got all these candidates who aren't just being pestered by, do you want to come work here? Great opportunity. And there's some real sort of tangible conversation and
it's
everything.
that resources and recruiters are getting mixed up though, and actually you bring someone into a business as a someone to go out and source people, but actually they're being used in a traditional recruitment way. I think that's part of the problem, because if you're, from what you've said, if you're using someone coming in to source you people in the right way, you'd be allowing them to produce content and really be engaging. That would be how you get people, but I don't think that's actually how they're being used. And I know that because the last 2 jobs I've had, I've been a resourcer, not a recruiter. And actually all I've been doing is what you'd call pure recruitment. I haven't been allowed to, write great content or go out and just have, a day where you have conversations with people about what the business does and really attracting people to you, because all the hiring manager wants is 10 CVs by the end of the day. And fine enough, you're not going to get that if you go about it in okay, 7.
Okay.
And I think that's part of the problem.
That's trade-off, I think, between branding and recruiting, or sales and branding. The branding is a longer-term project, building the LinkedIn groups or communities on Google Plus and so on, getting people into the talent networks, and that's not going to give a result by Friday. But the recruitment will. So it's from the top really. You have to think longer term and not just say, get those CVs to me yesterday.
And going back to what you said in the very beginning, Jorgen, about being a matchmaker in recruitment, I think what a lot of people forget is that there is that long-term talent community pool and the short-term one. And I think we need to look at it almost like the long-term is you're approaching it like dating. You wouldn't approach a potential husband on a first date and say, I'd like to marry you. Just the same as I genuinely think a recruiter shouldn't approach a passive or potential candidate on that first attempt and say, I've got a job, would you like it? It's about, to use an old-fashioned word, it's about courting the candidate, it's about finding out more about them, telling them more about the business, and it's that real slow burning development of a relationship, which is the same, whether it's a dating relationship or whether it's a candidate relationship. I think that there's still a mentality shift in recruitment to kind of get to that stage, take it away from the short-term stuff about I need 10 CVs on my desk today and build that talent community.
Absolutely. I think if you're an employer, it's a lot easier to attract. If you're Vodafone, you can attract all these people into your network. If you're an agency, it's going to be slightly trickier. If you're not Kelly, of course.
The Vodafones of the world have the Twitter issue, which is they get so many people.
Yes.
You then create a different problem, which is how do you actually present yourself to them, because you can't do that too easily.
Then you're going to have Vodafone careers and Vodafone customer services. Well, separate probably.
I think you don't want to date with a dating agency, but you want to date with the...
that's true.
But if the dating agency can help take you to the right person because they do the matchmaking.
And maybe Vodafone is just the George Clooney of sexual that's what we're saying.
Probably.
So therefore I prefer to use the network of the hiring manager as much as possible, because really prefers not to talk with the recruiter, but he wants to talk with the hiring manager. So I'm the person to facilitate all of that, and again educate the hiring manager in how to leverage their network.
I do think you're talking about a very sophisticated level of engagement there from a candidate, and also you've got to think, if you're a person in a job, you haven't necessarily got time to build lots of networks with lots of hiring managers. You've got time to network with people that you meet, but I think all of the networking activity as well, unless you integrate it as part of your day-to-day routine, it's time consuming.
I start with the hiring manager. When I do an intake with a hiring manager, I do not, I end my conversation with, who do you know for this job? And I will post the job online. Can you put it on your LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook profile? And next week, Monday, you have this team meeting. Your team members, or I talk 5 minutes and use the team of the hiring manager to spread the word. So that's where it starts. And then you build up names, and you start networking with those people who do you know who can do this job.
It's the old adage of good people know good people, don't they? And I suppose it's the same with networking. Good people know of good opportunities because they will be.
So the challenge is when you have a bad manager.
And what I can, in addition to that, as a recruiter, I can search on LinkedIn and see who this person already knows within the company I'm working in, and ask them, what can you say about this person? Can you recommend him for this job? So also help the hiring manager with proactive referral recruiting, or referral, as I call it.
Yeah.
What about how the candidate, as I said, going back to where we're saying candidate perception, how does the candidate see the use of the hiring manager and the use of the sourcer? So let's say the sourcer doing everything right, they're networking interesting articles. Where does the candidate sort of go from that? Where do they get into their mind, right? I'm following it's really great reads, interesting articles, tweeting all the time, etc. Once you've got a job you want, how do you get to that sort of candidate's mind? Social media wise, they need to be speaking to the hiring manager. Do you understand similar? I'm trying to make that sort of link there.
Once again, sorry.
That's okay. So if you as a candidate yourself, I'm all going from experience. So I remember when I graduated, I heard of LinkedIn, I put my name on it, and it kind of seemed a bit like, what's this all about? It's a bit scary, I'm going to leave it. No one at university said to me, it's a great place to find jobs or anything like that. Or you should read these articles, or you should do this, you should do that. I was just told, put your CV out online, apply to all jobs, apply everywhere, get your CV out, etc. That's pretty much what I was told at university. So I never would have known or perceived that I need to be speaking to a recruiter or a hiring manager. So, and I'm coming from a sourcing perspective. Once you're doing all this online network, how do you then, as someone trying to find a candidate, get that candidate to think, right, I now need to be speaking to my hiring manager or be speaking to me about a job? Where do you sort of make that link, that transition as such from interesting follower to, okay, now it's time to speak about a job?
It's kind of an education issue, isn't it? I mean, it's right, and I think it's quite scary actually that in this day and age where social media is so prevalent and such a key part of our role, that just generally that those sessions within universities and schools shouldn't be talking about networking and how to just all the different ways to find jobs, not just we'll put your CV out there and hope for the best. That somebody might find you.
But let's forget also a lot of internships or the first jobs are given by it's done via networking. All students that recommends to work for their company, student recruiters, campus recruiters who.
But you've got to be a good networker to find that internship as well, haven't you? It starts right there.
Yes, it all starts with networking. or at least 60 to 70% of all jobs.
Does anyone know what universities are doing, who maybe is in touch with them a little bit more to educate their people, or even in schools nowadays to educate people? Jorgen, you mentioned that you speaking at universities. I just wondered if you knew what direction they're heading in to provide that education.
So I do a lot of talks with business schools, and they're very into placing people onto good jobs because they're measured by the FT and so on. For when someone graduates, how long does it take them to find a job? So if it's over 90 days, then that's not good for the business school. So they put a lot of emphasis on career workshops and CV writing skills, interview skills, networking and so on. And I do social networking for them sometimes, just to teach them, be on LinkedIn, be on the professional internet, not just on Facebook or Twitter. And be proactive. Go out there and search for companies on LinkedIn. Keep talking about LinkedIn, but there are loads of other places. But there are 2.8 million companies on LinkedIn, which you can go in and look at who are the people in there, and then proactively go and approach these people however way you do it. So kind of be your own headhunter, because as a graduate, it's going to be very hard to get agency recruiters to work on your behalf. You're going to have to look out for number one there. So it's either your network or your internet skills that are going to help you.
Yeah. And do you think LinkedIn are building more of that into their system? Do you think they've kind of recognised that they are very powerful in that sense, and that they owe it to the grads of this world to educate them and to show them exactly what they can do?
Go.
Yeah, well, I know they have in the US they have such a a tool, a platform for graduates. Which helps them indeed to get a new job via LinkedIn, because well, of course, the benefit of LinkedIn to get them in as soon as possible. Because that group is a bit under, how you say that, they can use a bit more graduates on LinkedIn, put it this way. So I know that LinkedIn is working on tools that maybe expand that to the rest of the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, if it might work at grads.linkedin.com. If you type it, then you might find a page aimed at this group.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's also alumni.linkedin.com, which is where you can look at all the other alumni and so on from your university, what companies they've ended up in, what capacities they're in, and so on. And from there, you can find those people, and perhaps they can network your way into that company.
But is it the company's responsibility as well, though, to tailor some of the stuff that they have on their company page to, grads? There's the ability to add more than one thing on your company's page. So why would you not build your own network for grads? You have a talent pool online.
I think they're still stuck in we get 4,000 people apply for every one of our jobs.
Yeah,
so the problem is
which is fine, but you
sourcing through to get the right person. But
and
rather than how can we network to get the best ones. So the proactivity in terms of sourcing, I don't think is the first problem statement they've got. The problem statement they've got is how do we make sure we've got the best?
Or we filter.
But part of that might then be checking those people out to see how they interact.
Yes. And are they savvy enough to see what else we're doing? It's fine that you send your CV through to our recruitment inbox that every company has, that sits with plus 300 CVs in there constantly because you've got too many to go through. Or are you going to be the one that was clever enough to just have a route around, have a look about, and if you're really serious about working for us, find out what are the touch points you can get in contact with us? Because that's also quite I always think that's quite interesting. If someone's really determined to work for you, they will find a way other than just dropping their CV into your inbox and handing you on the phone to have a conversation with you, or someone within the business. They'll find a way in, and I always think it's quite admirable to do that and show that you really are passionate about working for that particular business. So.
Just take this in a slightly different direction. Are we going to create, through the ability of growing our networks, engaging with them, making it so much easier, that actually attrition will grow within the workforce? Because people will go, well, actually, I'm not happy here. I've had a bad day. My boss has really wound me up. I'm going to go and speak to Jorgen and see what he's doing and get a job at his company. He talked to me about it 3 months ago, and I was like, not really ready.
But I think that's already happened, because I think people now are, far more constantly on job alert mode than they ever were.
Oh, that's a really good point.
And also the fact that, the job for life or whatever just doesn't exist anymore. So people know that quite often to progress their career, it is easier to do that by moving externally than staying where you are. And there's also not the stigma attached to moving jobs. It's actually probably a better candidate is somebody that's had 3 jobs in the last 10 years than a candidate, unless they've moved progressively within their own company, that's had 10 years in one organisation, because you can become quite stigmatized and quite insular.
And work is also more organised in projects these days. So it's not only you don't have a job for life anymore.
You might have 3 jobs at the same time.
Yes, that's also another development. So I think there's such an maybe social network of online social networks maybe accelerates this, but
I think
it's as well a long-term.
Yeah, I think you're right, Paul. I think that has facilitated that. I think people being more aware of their networks has opened more opportunities to the point where you're approached as well. So you might have been sitting there quite happy, but because of the network, people will reach out to you.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting challenge for organisations to keep retention and.
Yeah, that's all good for us guys.
So are we wrapping up this session on, I think we're probably moving on to the next track now, so thank you very much to everybody, really interesting debate around networks and how to find future opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you.